Welcome back to another episode of Tendonitis Tuesday, and today's question is it okay to continue running or cycling during patellar tendonitis rehab? So let's first talk about how you can tell whether it's okay in your particular situation, and then I'll show you how you can make running or cycling safer for your tendons. If you have patellar tendonitis, a load reduction can be necessary to stop the injury from getting worse, and the easiest way for you to tell whether running or cycling are too much in your situation is by using your pain levels. In general, an activity doesn't interfere with your recovery if it doesn't lead to a big increase of pain. So if you come back from a run and your knees are fine in the 48 hours that follow, it's okay to go running. It's not okay if you're in pain the day after. But aside from that, you still have to consider two possible problems. First, during rehab, the main focus of your training should be to get your tendons stronger through slow strengthening work like slow squats, for example. Going running or cycling shouldn't be the priority of your training because they won't help you with your recovery. And if you neglect your rehab, it will just take longer overall. So if you have to choose between going cycling and doing rehab work, for example, do the rehab work, even if it's boring. Tendonitis will not get better unless you strengthen the tendons and fix biomechanical issues that contribute to patellar tendon overload, which brings us to problem number 2. If you look at the movements you go through when you're running or cycling, you'll notice that both activities occur in hip flexion, and depending on the geometry of your bike, this could be a lot of hip flexion. Now, hip flexion is not a problem per se, but if you sit a lot during your day, maybe in front of a computer, you already spend hours in hip flexion. If you then spend even more time doing a sport that takes place in hip flexion as well, you're at risk of developing muscular imbalances in your hips and legs. Cycling and running are also quad-dominant activities, and combined with what we just talked about, this can contribute to patellar tendon overload through tightness in the hip flexors, quads, and hamstrings, which also happen to be known risk factors of patellar tendonitis. But there are ways how you can make running and cycling safer for your tendons. Here's how. You can make pretty much any activity safer for your tendons by changing it based on the 5 risk factors for tendon irritation. These risk factors are time under tension, so how long are you putting your tendons under tension, amount of tension, how much tension is it, degree of deep knee flexion, how flexed are your knees during the activity, energy storage in the tendon, so how explosive are the movements, and finally, the biggest risk factor, a sudden increase in training load. So are you doing an unusually high training volume compared to the weeks before? Based on this, you can now make running safer by not running for long durations, and this is relative to your training history, running with a shorter stride length and higher cadence to reduce impact forces, not running on steep ground, not sprinting, and roughly maintaining the same weekly mileage. Once you know a mileage your tendons don't have a problem with, stick with it until your rehab is complete. And you can make cycling safer by keeping your rides relatively short, cycling with a higher cadence and lower force output, moving your saddle up to optimal height if it is low, not sprinting, and also roughly maintaining the same weekly cycling mileage until rehab is complete. And if you're running or cycling for cardio or to stay in shape, you can of course also make it safer for your tendons by replacing some of that training volume with other activities that don't stress your knees but help you achieve the same training goal, like swimming or upper body training, for example. One way I like to do this is by doing 3 sets of as many chin-ups and as many push-ups as possible with about 2 minutes of rest in between sets. That's an effective way to maintain some basic strength and fitness without spending too much time. So the answer is yes, under certain conditions, running or cycling are okay during patellar tendonitis rehab. And if you look at academic research, you'll even find cycling recommended as a safe cardio option for people with patellar tendonitis. You can use the changes we talked about to make sure these exercises won't interfere with your rehab, but no matter what you do, respect the message your pain levels are sending you. Now, as always, leave a comment below if you have any questions you'd like me to answer in the future or just to say hi. I love hearing from you. That's it for today, and I will see you next week.